Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my coverage of the 2023 National Book Festival. So this is a festival that is put on by the Library of Congress every year. Usually it happens during Labor Day weekend, so things feel really early this year, and I'm frankly thrilled that it took place in the local DC Convention Center because the weather was really hot. But anyway, I have come back from this event. I have some goodies like, the program, and this is like the artwork for this year. And this is the official bag for this year with a red theme to it. And actually, for the first time, it has Velcro, which was really useful during the day. And I will link to more information down below, including the Library of Congress YouTube page, because they did live stream a couple of the big stages if you're interested in anything there, or they might put more stuff up later. I actually went into this year thinking it wouldn't be as fun for me because I didn't find as many smaller authors that I was interested in or had read before, and usually that's kind of my bread and butter. And instead, all of the ones that interested me were actually some pretty big names, and I was concerned about, getting in to see them in time, and if I'd have time to get some books signed and also do other things. But actually, things worked out pretty well for me, much better than expected. So one of the first things I did actually is I went to see Chasten Buttigieg, and I've had this book of his ever since COVID, but he recently published a version for teenagers, about his coming out experience and what it's like to sort of grow up and deal with all these feelings and what could help kids along the way. And this, I think, is a little more personal to him in a way, is my understanding. I didn't actually get the other book, but I figured I could grab this one off my shelves and get it signed, which is what I did. Let's see if I could. There we go. So that was really fun. He was really nice. I saw him for 30 seconds, but he was really nice. And I actually had to, I'm glad I went to his line an hour before schedule because his ballroom definitely was very full, and the session before his was also very full, so we were lucky to get in. I also went to hear Elliot Page speak about his memoir about transitioning, and so it was interesting. It was a very queer sort of beginning for me, and Chasten's newest memoir is aimed toward kids, so it's funny because I think in his Q&A session there were a lot more older adults also asking him questions, and meanwhile Elliot Page's memoir, at least from my understanding, it's more personal to his experience, not necessarily for kids, but he got a lot of teenagers and even younger kids talking about coming out and that sort of experience, and I guess looking to him as a role model, maybe because he's somebody from the movies, that sort of thing. But there was an interesting juxtaposition. And then after that, I actually went with my dad, but we tend to go to different sessions because I focus a lot on memoir and fiction, and he focuses a lot on nonfiction. But together we saw a couple panels. I went with him to see Siddhartha Mukherjee, who writes a lot of science and medicine books. He has his own practice and all, and I've never actually read them, but I know about him from BookTube, and he was a really good public speaker. And then finally, we went to the George Saunders panel. George Saunders is a well-known, respected literary fiction writer, and he actually was bestowed an award this year by the Librarian of Congress. It was sort of the Library of Congress's American Fiction Award. So he got that award and then got to talk about his works, and he also had a recent collection of short stories that he published, so I went ahead, I got that signed. And actually, his line for signing was a lot longer than Chasten Buttigieg's, which was lucky for me in my timing because this was way at the end of the day and I had nothing left to do after this. But I guess that kind of tells you about the audience in a way at the book fest, because a lot of the literary nerds, I guess, come for this sort of thing. And I'm thinking in terms of identity, maybe as a writer myself, in a way, writing literary short stories. And speaking of identity, it's almost like I'm supposed to be George Saunders. years, trying to find myself as a writer or something. I don't know. Although he certainly had some interesting things that I mostly agree about when he talks about craft and empathy and that sort of stuff. So that was all really fun and interesting. I had a really nice time. I was so glad I got to do everything and actually stay there all day or most of the day anyway, so it made everything feel really worthwhile. And I have some footage now to share with you, so hopefully you can enjoy a little flavor of this as well. And so that's all I'll say for my intro, except that I'll be back on this channel shortly again for my monthly AuthorTube video, but for now, action!
One day you're going to grow up and you're going to go to Target and someone's going to interrupt you and tell you that they went to high school with you and you are going to have no idea who that person is. But I was so convinced in 8th grade that that person's opinion was the opinion that mattered the most. I was so terrified of what they thought about me. And I wish that 8th grader would have known that it was okay to be different. It was okay to be goofy or loud. It was okay to stick out, but back then it felt like you had to be one type of person. And I just wish I would have been able to live into all of those differences, to just lean into my differences and be celebrated for that as well. Imagine what life would have been like had I not spent 22 years running away from myself.
Now, it's fine and everything, but then you had to go be the husband of the first gay presidential.
That's so rude, right? I was just getting going with my teaching career. Yeah.
How the hell has that been?
We only have 27 minutes left, and that's it. It's been great. It's been everything. Of course, it can be really difficult and scary, but it is also very inspiring.
But through the lens of being the first gay couple, right? There's so many firsts along those way.
Yeah. It's been really powerful to connect with people because of that historical facts. People who are of an older generation who never thought that they would see this day. That was very meaningful for me when he was running and being in DC. And then being able to write stories like this and tour the country and work with librarians and teachers and have these conversations with younger people about not being afraid to be themselves. I never thought that I would be this person. I never thought that I would be talking about politics on late night news or defending LGBTQ rights. But I'm glad I get to be this person. I'm really glad I got to grow up and celebrate who I am openly, and that journey for me was long and it was bumpy and sometimes terrifying, but now I get to turn around and think about how we have to continue pulling other people up. I remind myself of the privilege that we have to be in this position, and you got to ask yourself as an ally, what are you doing to deserve that title? To be an active ally. I don't think it's enough to just occasionally post on social media or buy the shirt at Target. if you can still buy it at Target. But you have to ask yourself, how am I using my power or my privilege and my platform to help other people?
It's often said, you write a memoir because there's a burning question you want to ask yourself. What was that question, and were you happy with the answer?
Yeah, I think the question was, which kept coming up as the process of writing it, was, why did this have to take so long? Like, why did this take so long? And just this, when you're sitting down to write something and reflecting from your earliest memories as a toddler, obviously, to where you find yourself in the present, and to know that in this, how deeply I knew this for so long.
Well, at 6 years old, you asked your mother, can I be a boy?
Yeah.
She said no, but...
Yeah. Spoiler alert, she said no. And why did there have to be such interference that I think really did, I'm grateful for the journey, I'm who I am because of all of that, but I do just feel like there's a lot of time that I lost.
So partly I'm wondering, so as you write this book and you explore yourself, how much of that do you think was you were writing the book because you wanted to answer that question, because you wanted to explore yourself? And how much of it do you think was you were writing it for an audience? You wanted them to understand something about you, you wanted them to understand something about the journey that people like us take. Where's that, I mean, it's not 100% one or the other, but where's that mix in your mind about why you did the book?
Yeah, I mean, I think on some level, like when I first started to write like a proposal, it really did feel like a spark, and just words started coming out. Like it felt quite organic, stream of consciousness. The first chapter of the book's actually the first thing I wrote, and it's close to the same as that first day I wrote it. The sensation was just so exhilarating, as I said, because something like that wouldn't have been possible before, and that was like selfishly something I wanted to cling to. I was like, what's going on? And it was obviously as the process grew that it became more about, what it does mean for other people to read this, and what you do want to share, and knowing that. And I suppose for me, in writing it, are the moments where I felt scared or insecure about sharing certain things. I really reflected on how much books have helped me, and how various writers and their vulnerability and generosity in terms of sharing parts of themselves that had a great impact on me. And I think that was something that I thought a lot about while writing the book, and pushed me when I did feel intimidated or apprehensive.
Understand one another, and it's natural to be curious about one another. And so if the political tone is such that I don't want to understand you and I'm not curious about you, get thee behind me, fiction can serve as an antidote to remind us that actually other people are interesting and they're on a continuum with us. And I think that kind of the book sort of reminded me of that as I was writing, which was a kind of a side note.
Yeah. Well, in the publishing world, for several years now, there's been somewhat of a debate about whether, reading fiction actually does make you more empathetic. Originally there was a study, I think, that came out that, psychologist or anthropologist or sociologist did a study that like people who read fiction are more empathetic. And then there was a sort of backlash to that argument. Where do you stand?
I agree with both sides because I'm so empathetic. I teach writing and I have a Substack called Story Club, so we do a lot of analysis of stories. And the one thing I know kind of as a former scientist is that, okay, when you're writing a story, just if your goal is to keep the reader reading, if that's your goal, which I think it should be, you'll find that you're inevitably led down a certain path. That's a path of greater specificity, tighter, more compelling language. But let's just stop with those two. If I say, once there was this guy, nobody wants to read that book. Once there was a very tall man, his back always hurt. And he had one great love in his life, which that he was a model train enthusiast. Suddenly, I kind of like that guy. Oh, how does he bend down to work on the trains? You know, his back hurts for it. So just by, oh, I gotta write this down. But you know, just by applying specificity, I think it interests readers more. Somehow our brains work that way. You hear the car, you hear the dented red car. The second one comes alive more in the mind. So specificity, and then the I can't remember the second. So when you're more specific, the reader feels engaged and respected. You know, if I feel, if I say in my book, God forbid, the cat jumped onto the black table, the plainer ebony surface, the dark hue, flat space. Somewhere in that, you're like, hey, George, I've got other things I could be doing. You know? So my model is you got in a reading experience, we've got an intimate communication going. My responsibility as a writer is to respect you, and say, oh, this person's not any dumber than me. They've traveled, they've loved, they've lost. So let's talk to this person on a high level. That's called revision. So all of those things, I think, tends to make the writer, it lures out empathy on the part of the writer. You know, when I'm writing a character, if I just write a caricature of that person, it's not going to be interesting. If I lean in and day after day keep asking the character, well, who are you really? Do you have any redeeming qualities? That's me practicing empathy. And I would say some version of the same thing goes on in the reader's mind.